Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 101 of Overdose and Chill. We are live across LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and anywhere else that Raven's decided to put us out there today. We've got a comment section open, so please drop us a comments. I'm Sam. I'm the Managing Director of Overdose Sydney, and today I'm joined by Michael from Cycology. Welcome, Michael. Nice to chat with you today.
Hey, Sam. You too.
So just to start us off here, why don't you tell everyone what you do at Cycology, your background, and a little bit more about Cycology as a company.
Okay, no problems. So Cycology, as the name might suggest, and is often misunderstood when people don't see the spelling, is a cycling-related brand. We sell cycling apparel. We started off in very late 2011. We predominantly did T-shirts. Cycology is the baby of my wife, Serena, who's the creative force behind the brand, and me, who my background is business. Worked in a range of areas since leaving uni. Had my own businesses from an early age, and got into this as kind of the final stage of my work career, I hope. So Serena, a very elite athlete, happened to be a very talented artist. So Cycology was a marriage, something Serena loved, which is cycling and athletics, and her artistic endeavors. So it was a very natural evolution. But early days, we were that classic bootstrap startup that said, yeah, we think we've got a good concept. We think there's a lot of cyclists out there. We think they love to buy T-shirts. We built a very rudimentary website. We produced about 15 T-shirts. We thought, here we go. And we'll just, the rest will quickly. And we quickly learned that if you build it, as the saying goes, they don't necessarily come. So not having any real experience between the whole digital marketing space, we kind of floundered for our first year. I think first year into it, we'd done orders, grand total of 100 orders. And you probably don't have to be Houdini to realize that 100 orders doesn't equal a business. And we weren't intending to do this as a plaything. We were very keen to do it as a business. So at the end of a year, I realized we had a problem. The problem is we didn't know how to market. We were quite fortunate. I kind of shook the trees of people I knew and basically suggested that we needed help. Mm-hmm. Problem, a budget to, I guess, employ that help. So we were quite fortunate, I think, in that we crossed paths with some we were referred to that was starting out in a consultancy role as a freelance digital marketing support type person. And, he was very, very generous with his time. And the net of it is he helped us get from, zero, ground zero really, to, I guess, viability.
It's like a fascinating thing, right? Because it's such a great product and it's so visible. And as soon as you see the product and the beautiful artwork that's done on it, as soon as you see that, it's instantly recognizable. And it's something that you see out there on the trail and you're like, oh, what is that? And then people will come back and get it again. But to try and get it to that critical mass point it was a difficult process for you, I guess. And it's just interesting to think about, all the people along the way that help you get there.
Yeah, it's funny. It's an interesting journey when you look back. When I look at the incarnations, this year was officially our 10th anniversary, I guess. Mm-hmm. And if I look at years ago and where we are now, it's just chalk and cheese. The evolution. I think it's really a learning curve. I mean, I guess some people would come to the business with more industry specific. We didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we learned and adapted a lot, really fast, actually, as a brand. Like if you look at where we were day one, and we probably had, I don't know what you call it, 10 or 15 products, even products, one product range of t-shirts, 15 different designs. Now we probably have 500 different designs across, sorry, I don't know how many designs, but we've probably got 500 different product lines.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing evolution that we've, with some effective marketing. I remember that consultant we worked with day one, he said to me, where would you like to get to? And I said, well, day one, I'd love to be doing something like 250 orders a month. And he said, okay. And then where would you like to get to after that? And he said, oh, well, 500.
Mm.
And I remember we achieved the first milestone in 3 months,
Wow.
which is pretty good when you've done 100 orders in a year. So you think, happy days. And then
quite an uplift.
Yeah, quite an uplift. But you quickly get, impatient with that, because you realize, well, 250 orders isn't a business either.
Mm.
And then we got to 500 within 6 months. And I thought, well, that's pretty good. But again, you quickly realize 500 orders isn't a business.
Mm.
And then, it was a case of we just continued to develop and evolve and, push the envelope as hard as we could. And, we just continued to adapt. We continued to develop product. We continued to develop design, and we continued to learn. Mistakes along the way, but, I think everyone does that. You pivot from those mistakes and how quickly you can adapt and how quickly you can learn.
So what are some of the mistakes that you ran into that you think are worth sort of sharing with people so that they can take from those learnings and hopefully avoid them themselves?
Yeah, good question. Hard question, because you try not to dwell on the things. And there's a lot of, like, learning's learning. I mean, it's, what are some of the mistakes? Yeah,
I suppose another way to think of it is what are those pivot points that you've kind of run into along the way? Like, when you've got one product range with a bunch of designs, and then you start going, all right, well, maybe it's time to start adventuring into another product, whether it's bibs or shorts or something along the lines. Like, what did that process look like?
Yeah, so really good question too, because you kind of, because you don't have better intelligence, you back kind of what do you think the market wants? And the reality is, to be successful in business, you have to create what the market wants, because if what I want is what the market wants, that's great if you think you can pick the market. But anyone that thinks they can continually pick the market is kidding themselves. You might get some right, you might get some wrong. Hopefully you get more right than wrong. But it's really, and I think something we did learn to do is we would obviously have a view on what might work, and then you quickly learn whether it does or doesn't work. The market tells you whether it's right or wrong. If it's right, you push that direction as hard as you can, and we did. And if it's wrong, you try losses. So I think some of the mistakes, just getting back to that initial question, is we tended to get excited early on if things were successful, and we got to a stage where we thought, wow, we can put our brand name on anything and we can sell it. And we started in t-shirts, and then we went to things like hoodies. And when we went into some of those other products, days we produced locally. Once we started to go into some more complex, we had to produce offshore.
Yeah.
And that involved much larger product, much bigger investments. And got, I think, with our ambition, a little carried away, and we were happy to commit to large quantities of items that were really untested. And we really, they were some of the mistakes. We were able to sell product, but we a long period of time in product that wasn't that popular in the marketplace. So we struggled to shift that sort of stuff. We then quickly adapted to, as we evolved our product, we looked at getting, like for me, it's now better to smaller quantities early on and risk selling out quickly if you're really successful, because we can normally replenish rather than committing to really large volumes and being stuck with stock problems. We're lucky as a brand in that we tend to not do much discounting at all. Two reasons. We don't want to, as a brand, to protect the brand value, and two, we really don't have to, and that's not an arrogance. That's just we've learned to source product at effective quantities that we know if we get a hot product, we're going to have a problem in that we're going to have a stock out situation, but we can replenish fairly quickly. And there's nothing wrong with that because, you know, like, yes, I don't like missing, but from a market perspective, you do create this incredible urgency where people say, well, if I get it, if I like it, I better buy it. And, you know, we had a lot of situations where people would say, oh, I was thinking about it last week and now it's gone. And you think, well, you know, as a brand, that's pretty well gold, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about sort of ensuring that you've got those right level of like the right quantity of product, particularly going smaller early and then being able to replenish quickly. Do you have a mixed model of like onshore sourcing and offshore sourcing for these products as well?
Look, now it's all offshore to get the sort of quality that we need and the branding that we need. I mean, in our early days, I had a local T-shirt production in Sydney where we're based in a place called Tarrant Point, and it was amazing. I remember the first really big Christmas period where we were just going ballistic. I would call, you know, the guy that owned that, you know, T-shirt production, and you know, I remember I'd have 5:30 a.m. calls to him, and I said, Adam, Michael here, I'm in the shit again, Adam, and we would just be in a situation where we would be selling so fast, and this guy would be turning over new productions within sometimes 2 to 3 days. Incredible stuff. You know, we'd be taking orders for stock we didn't have 3 weeks out from Christmas. Really crazy stuff. You know, you know, pitch black hair before then, Sam. But you know, that it's just really dangerous way to play the game. But that's what we did because we were hungry for the business. Now it's totally pivoted. You know, everything's offshore. You don't, you know, if you're replenished in 6 weeks, you're doing well. Sometimes 6 weeks is too long. Obviously, it's lost opportunity. As I said, we got a lot of product. We're lucky now, and we've got pretty deep. We've been able to invest pretty deep in stock where we need to on the, you know, key product lines. But you can't always have what everyone wants at the time. But we don't normally have too much of a problem in that regard, I think, now.
Sure. You've got an interesting dynamic in that, like, you know, you've obviously got a core range of products, but then you've also got new designs coming in all the time too. So how do you sort of like match that that level of sourcing or back the right kind of product and know what's going to work in the market from not only from a style or from a product point of view, but actually the style that's on there too?
Again, look, styles you tend to see, like, because you've a history of what works, you normally know there's a certain, you know, we tend to develop designs in certain, if you like. So we know that we've got cycling jerseys that are really the driving force of our business now. And I didn't really explain the fact that, yes, we started in T-shirts, probably spent 3 to 4 years developing the T-shirt market. Shirts can you sell? We had 40 or 50 T-shirts. Category, it was a leisure item for people that like cycling. It's great. You know, we got to the stage where after 4 years, we're selling 50,000 T-shirts a year. Terrific. But it was really hard to continue to push the growth of that. So we moved into cycling jerseys in a very, very small way. People were obviously, being cyclists, were asking us for that sort of product to it. And, you know, probably but 2-3 years later, it is now the driving force of the business. You know, it is all about cycling jerseys. And what we do with those designs is we know that for men, we've got some really like out there designs, and there's a certain part of the market that goes for that. We've got more middle of the road designs, a little safer for a lot of people. And then we've got some fairly tame designs, which we call incognito type designs. And that's where we kind of compete with more of the broader market. We distinctive design brand. We're quite a niche brand. But we also want to, you know, sometimes people will jump down into the more outrageous. You know, there are people there that are very fashion forward, that are prepared to be a bit edgy, but sometimes people aren't quite that way. So we want to be able to take them on a bit of a journey and say, okay, well, if you don't want something that's too wild day one, we'll give you something you can kind of, you know, live with. And then hopefully when you experience what our product's like, I mean, we put a lot of work into the product quality side of it. You know, the next product, you may get a little more adventurous, What we've found is that the cycling market is a very male-driven audience at the moment. I mean, increasingly in the feed, but it's, you know, heavily male. The sheer volume, sheer numbers are male. Most of the competitive brands are very male-focused. We happen to have an incredibly strong female following. I think our product is a fashion product. You know, we're selling a fashion, you know, fashion on a bike.
Yeah.
Women are very much more in tune with fashion, so it's probably not surprising that we perform, you know, we punch well above our weight in the female audience. And you know, we don't target the more mainstream female designs because there's, you know, women love the design element we bring to the table. So we just produce design. For men, you've got to be careful because men are, we have the different take time, and you know, but it's interesting, you know, you talk about what's not going to work. How do we decide? You get an idea of what might be successful, but you never know for sure. Probably 3 years ago, Serena came up with a jersey design called 8 Days, and it's a very, very cool jersey based on, you know, Beatles. It's pretty out there, and I personally looked at it and thought, man, it's just way too out there. And Serena and I often have that dynamic. You know, I kind of think I understand the market differently, whereas Serena, being a creator, will always push the envelope.
Yeah,
it's terrific that creative element, but sometimes you can go too far in that, you know, your audience, you know, that 35, 40, 50-year-old man doesn't want to be that out, maybe.
Yeah.
So 8 Days was a classic point where we produced a jersey, and I thought, you know, it's a risky jersey, but we did a fairly small order, and I was wrong, you know, sold out within about 24 hours. It's our best-selling men's jersey still. So wrong like that. And we've been able to leverage that design, the designs that are in the same space, and it's pretty simple, yet produced another 8 Days, because, you know, when you're in a fashion type area, when you get a winning design, I remember I dealt with a marketing guy years ago, and he said to me, the first guy we dealt with when we got our first winning design in T-shirts or jerseys, and he said, can you get Serena to just do more like that? And to me, that's a little bit like, you know, the rock and roll band that has a greatest hit.
Yeah.
They all want, but, you know, you're lucky if you produce one. If you produce another one, that's great. But even the greatest bands in the world, every song isn't a greatest hit. So, of course, but, you know, we're just grateful to be the sort of brand where we, you know, these designs for us are evergreen. Most fashion brands, a good season, it's a good season, and then they've got to come up with the next season. Us, these designs keep on living. So I'm not sure whether it'll be the top year 4, 5, and 6, but as long as it's the number one seller, we're just using it,
It's really interesting, the talk about, how the balance between the creative side and the sort of business side, right? So how the two of you work together to kind of think about, all right, well, you've got Serena pushing the envelope out there and saying, this is where the creative voice of where we want to go, and you're sort of paring back and going, okay, well, yep, you can do. Are you sitting there and working out like volumes of, all right, well, we need, X number of ranges. This is sort of our risky range. This is our core range, and sort of investing in those accordingly.
Yeah.
And how often are you doing that, or what does that look like as a business?
It's constant. We have about 40, 45 releases a year. So our strategy is every weekend we're releasing something new. So it might be, okay, here's a new jersey. It might be one a month. And we've got, say, a new T-shirt, a new technical T-shirt, or a base layer, or we release for men these things called gravel shirts, which are a fantastic kind of Hawaiian, a microfiber towel, a new pair of socks, a new accessory for the bike. So the idea is we've been quite successful and effective in broadening the range. I mean, our audience are consumers. They're engaged and passionate about. It's quite a costly sport. I mean, a lot of the people that are riding bikes out there are riding very expensive bikes, as you probably, the more obsessive amongst them have got multiple bikes. It's not uncommon for people to have 3, 4, 5 bikes, and they might, they cost a lot of money. So, for them to accessorize in how they look and how they is not a big decision. And one of the things that's been tremendous for us as a brand is to, start to understand more about the propensity of customers to buy a very coordinated look. We're lucky with the design element we have. We can apply that design to multiple things. So when we get a really strong design on a jersey, it now becomes the socks, the base layer, the neck tube, the gloves, and we see the propensity of people to want to buy a whole story, which for us is gold. Again, women today are far more predisposed to do that. What the benefit to us has been, we've seen an order value over the years. It's gone, I think in our early days selling T-shirts, it may have been, sub $100 in Australian dollar terms. And now it would be, well over $150. So again, we have to do the same work to make a sale. So if the sale's generating twice the revenue, that's tremendously, important for us as a brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're doing those style pieces, you talked about, like, you've got a new style coming in, someone takes, or they'll buy the jersey, for instance, and then they'll like that, and then they'll buy the entire outfit and sort of, take it through the entire range. Do you spend a lot of time trying to make sure that, things mix and match together as well, so that, you can bring in a new jersey that is going to work with the beard, but is going to work with the socks and the anything else on the bike as well?
Look, 100%. Again, look, it's all part of the process of, we've got this constant ability to come up with new designs. And the new design is you're saying to the market, hey, here's something we like. You tell us whether you do or don't. I mean, we get an indication really quickly. We're lucky these days in that, to impolitely call a non-performer a dog. We're very that we don't have dogs these days. So touch wood, we keep not having that. You get average performers, which, you're not going to get superstars every time. An average runs its course, and then we just don't restock it. We don't have to sell it. We don't restock it, and it doesn't get all the goodies with it. Obviously, we don't produce. Once you get the top performer, we go to town. So we will never produce the accessories for a new design day one. Too risky. Don't right. Once we know we've got it right, out come the accessories, and then more reason to buy, more reason to delight. I think the concept of the weekly release for us is hopefully very careful with our email marketing strategy. We don't overdo that. I see a lot of brands, and I've subscribed to brands, as I'm sure all of us have, that you very quickly unsubscribe from them. And I hope that now we as I said, we're very respectful database, and the idea should be every week we're going to delight them with something. They may not want to buy it, they may not even like it, but it's new, it's different, and I think to have that degree of creativity is it's very special, because the market, I think, for products out there pretty widely is very homogeneous. So I like the fact that we're different, and I think our customers really like the fact that we're a very, very different brand. What I accept is, when you're different, it's a blessing and a curse. But we definitely stand for something. And I've always said, so the easy proposition in the marketplace, because it's binary. People either like it or they don't. If we've got them heart and soul, and we tend to do that with people. They become very religious about our brand. People talk about social proofing. We have an Instagram feed that is nothing but exclusively our customers. We don't solicit it, volunteer it. And Serena has thousands of posts where people get posted, and she's just the queen of deciding which get a run and which people don't. And that's a great luxury, I think.
We've got a question here from Ryan. So how does Overdose help you sell Serena's greatest hits?
Yeah, well, with Overdose, Sam, before your time, but years ago, and there's a bit of a backstory to that, but I won't go into that. No, we've had a very no, it's all positive. No, I mean, in terms of how we started, we days with the consultant I'd worked with, we'd developed a degree of success using Facebook only for our marketing. Since we joined forces with Overdose about 3 years ago, we use search heavily now. So search and social are our two main engines, and we're other ways, obviously, to broaden our reach. So how does Overdose help us? They help us with a very effective performance marketing strategy spread across search and social, and we've significantly increased the scale of the brand, the reach of the brand's channels, and I think with the performance marketing team we work with, very, very stable and good team for us. I think we're constantly looking at what else we can do. And I think the guys at Overdose are always looking at sure that they're very relevant. They're very on top of the changes that are happening in those spaces, and those are things that we just could never do in-house. You could never stay on top of the way things are changing in the marketplace. So we have our ups and downs in terms of how we perform in that space, but the downs are acceptable and the ups are very, very good for us. So
and obviously over the past year, 18 months, there's been a lot of change in that landscape, particularly with the iOS changes affecting Facebook, and we're seeing a big change in sort of ability to convert in those channels. Have you seen large changes in that? And then you know, what is the? I mean, I know the answer to this, but I'm interested to sort of see your perspective on it. Where the team has come in and sort of recommended changes and started reinvesting in different areas.
Yeah, look, you're absolutely right. We definitely. I mean, 18 months has been a incredible months for a period for all online brands. I think we went from some really buoyant times during the COVID period. The iOS changes were very challenging for about a 4 to 6 month period. Last year at Christmas time was tough with everyone competing for that space. But yeah, look, I don't really get too involved in managing a business scale that we do now with the team we've got. Really look at Overdose as my marketing team, and we have very high level discussions on a monthly basis, and if we need to, but I really rely on those guys to work out and guide us, give us the high level advice, and then we have to provide whatever content, and we have to do what we need to do on our side. But I'm not the sort of I guess business manager that wants to understand everything that you guys do. You're the experts, and as I don't need to know too much of the detail. So I certainly let the girls know when I'm not how we're performing, not in a critical way, but as a business manager,
Absolutely, yeah.
kind of the guy that says, look, this return, we're pushing the envelope. We got to do better than this, from a viability point of view. And I must say that are very proactive at responding to that, and they, to date, touch wood again, they've always been able to get us back, do whatever learnings they've had to do in the background to make sure we can get the sort of results and return on investment that we need as a brand.
Oh, look, that's great. I think the things that you've touched on there about us being an extension of your team and being that sort of partnership that we have, and then that trust that's there of we've got something isn't working and it has been a challenging market, but the trust that you have in us to be able to turn that around and deliver what you need is fantastic, and that sort of really sort of helped us both through this period of time, and we've been able to get where we need. Speaking of people from the past, Rob Kane is asked a question here. With the superstars, how do you manage keeping up with the demand for those bestsellers to maximize sales? Supply chain is always a pain point.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Nice to see you. Look, again, we've got very good supplier relationships. In the scale of big business, that big, but to the suppliers we deal with, to us, the relationship is critical. We produce a very complex product in the we're in, because we deal with the original design that is absolutely unique out there in the production world. All of our competitors deal with digital artwork. We deal with hand-drawn. So when I get my 50 emails a day from suppliers from Asia or wherever saying we can produce your jerseys, your gloves or whatnot, it's a very quick delete for me, because we've discovered is that, we're in a world where everyone says they can do it, but getting stuff done to the standard we need it done, to the color integrity we need it done. I mean, color's incredibly important in our products. We've learned that to be incredibly difficult. I mean, most of the factories where they've had to rework their the way that they produce product to be able to produce our product. So to the thought of us leaving one of the factories and starting up a new relationship is something we just would not want to entertain if we could possibly avoid it. I think one of the greatest, when you talk about, say, learnings or mistakes, it's interesting, people that don't understand offshore production they tend to say to you, well, you can get anything made in China, or you can get anything. Man, that's the greatest myth known to man. Anyone that makes that statement has never dealt with use. We will often supply our factories with a very clear product brief. We can give them a sample of a product and we say, we exactly want this is a design, these are the color, Pantone colors, etc. And some of the first samples that come back to us bear no resemblance. So to say you can copy something, produce it and get a copy is an absolute myth. We deal with highly technical products. They have, very complex fabrics that make them up, great importance on design, accuracy and integrity, on color. There are so many variables you can get wrong, and to get them right is a huge exercise. And the difference between getting it 80% right and 100% right is often the difference between success and failure in a fashion type product like we sell.
And with a new design that has new colors on it, if it's the same style of products, so it's the same jersey, how long does it take for that back and forth between you and the supplier to actually get that right?
Yeah, again, really good question, because like small number of factories we work with. We have a factory we will go to for our jerseys, and they've worked with us, and because they've worked with us, they will often get it right first time, and if they don't, there might be 2 to 3 incarnations. Incarnations are really frustrating. We obviously like them to get it right, but some designs are more difficult than others. But getting back to the original question, so because we've now got factories that get it right once, that's a huge for us in terms of time and speed to market. In terms of Rob's question, how do we gauge the market? Well, and how do we source for it? Again, with new products, we're very conservative. Once the product has a proven track record, we keep, like on some of those winning jersey designs, we're deep. We just hold big stocks of it because we don't want to sell out, and we know I'm going to sell 1,000 here. So if I got 1,000 sitting in the warehouse, I can live with that. And I don't want to stock out because, in reality, and as everyone would know in an online, it's fine. Yes, it's unavoidable to stock out at times, but I don't know the number. I don't think you can ever get that sort of intel. But every time you don't have product and can't fulfill, a customer order request, you've probably got a very high rate of, lost sale, I would say. So.
And sometimes it's great to drive that demand, but sometimes a lost sale is a lost sale and they don't come back the next time as well. You kind of lose the opportunity.
Yeah, correct.
So when you're backing in those new products, or when you're backing them in, when you're not ready to back them in, and you've bought a smaller range of a style that you think's a little bit out there, do you then, how long does it then take you to then reorder, and how do you know what the quantities are to reorder of those? You sort of then putting it into a category of a style that you're like, okay, it looks like we're selling at that rate, and that's the sort of volumes we need to buy.
Yeah, 100%. So we do, we very much delta off what's the closest product, what's its order rate. I've got a very good inventory system we use. It gives us really good locations because we're global. It's quite interesting. You can get products that sell at very different rates in Europe to, say, the UK. The US, which is a really strong market for us, sells at a totally different rate. To adjust, and we've got warehouses now in all those regions. So, if I've got 8 days, I will have, say, 1,000 8 days in the US, but I might have 250 in the UK to satisfy my year's demand. And it's that sort of difference. In Europe, and another sell rate, and in Australia, it's another sell rate. So you really need to. We manage inventory now. I think it's a really important part of any business like ours. It can be the difference between, success and failure as a business. So, it's a complex and it's an ongoing game. You can, in inventory, as everyone would know, you can have too much or too little, and those things are problems for any business. So you try to get it as just right as you can, and you will never get it 100% right, but better.
And when you talked about America and the UK, I think you're in 80 countries now.
Yep.
What is the process to make a decision about that looks like the right kind of market? How do you then test that market and then get into, a full steamrolling effect like you are in the US and the UK now? What does that journey look like?
Look, I mean, when you say test that, we really through our the market, some to you and some markets don't. So we don't specifically go, we go pretty broad with our advertising strategy, I guess. And what we've learned that certain markets are obviously really responsive, and they're the markets that tend to be, cost effective for us. I mean, as an example, we tried in our early days to target Japan because we would be very receptive to our product offering with our marketing efforts. So we just couldn't attack that market because we're not a Japanese brand, and it was, I think, too intimidating for the Japanese market. Very fortunate, about a year and a half ago, a local Japanese company approached us to sell our brand in Japan, and which they've done, and they're doing an extraordinary job. A localized business in Japan. So for us, the localization is a big piece. Being a smaller brand, we're really not local across the world. We're local in Australia. But for us, the English-speaking markets are the big plus. Europe, okay, but relative to the size of the European market, which is bigger than the US. In the US, we would do, we perform much stronger because at least we've got, same language, etc. So, yeah, I think that's just a reality of the sort of brand we are and the sort of resources we've got.
And when you go into those markets, you're trying to establish yourself as a brand. Are you going in heavy with your uniqueness as a brand in terms of your style? So you're going sort of more trying to push into that, narrow it in there in the same way that you're moving, new customers, particularly in the men's, sort of going in from that incognito mode sort of into sort of like the broader fashion. Are you going in that route, or are you going in and saying, this is who we are as a brand and trying to establish yourself clearly?
100%. I mean, there are brands there in our industry that are much bigger than us that are selling to that more incognito audience. So if we go toe to toe with them, where's our point of difference? In business, you need a moat. You need to be different. I mean, to be successful, you need to be different, I think. It's a really important part of any business to really look themselves in the mirror and say, I mean, just being different isn't necessarily good. You can be different and be terrible. For us, obviously, our competitive moat, if we've got one, is our design. Because everyone can produce, and many brands can produce a jersey of our quality. They can produce pricing. They can probably do similar. So we go in, front foot forward, and we were very happy, obviously, with a market like America, that America really has responded very well to our design. And even though we do obviously cater to a niche in the market, the sheer volume of the American market makes it a very attractive niche for us. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, like, I think you talk about, being different. And I think your difference is that you understand clearly who your customer is, right? That, you've got that female cyclist. We've got all these brands that are very much tailored towards male cyclists. They're very, they're very generic in their branding. They're very clean sort of style. Whereas yours is very clear. It's very out there. It's really easy to identify when you're out on the track. And it's great to see, a customer who's sort of leaning into supporting a group of people that aren't really supported and identified within that market as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's gold for us. If we can find a market that people aren't catering to well, and we can cater to them well, then, you know, it's not we've got any greater aim in life. We just want to do business, you know, like
Yeah.
I just, you know, like, you know, we're happy to pitch it any way that the market responds. So we're definitely grateful to have that sort of market niche that has responded so well to our brand.
Mm. And just sort of shifting sort of focus now, you know, we've sort of talked about the evolution of the brand. We've talked about, you know, the bumps and hurdles you sort of got along the way, and now sort of you're expanding it sort of globally, and sort of how you've, you know, taken into different markets with, you know, a supplier that's selling your product, or, you know, a local company that's selling in Japan versus going off those English-speaking markets in the UK and the US. Now we're sort of moving into a period of time where the market's far more challenging, right? So we've gone through years of, you know, incredible growth. You know, I'm sure that throughout that period of time, you know, the amount of, you know, the uptake of cycling in Australia has been enormous as well. You know, like there was times where you couldn't buy a bike in Australia, and that must have been great for your market as well. And I'm sure that's the same in other countries. We're now moving into, you know, a market where people are going to have to start thinking a little bit more about money. We're going to see what's happening over the next couple of months. But how do you adjust your focus throughout this period to sort of make sure that you stay relevant, you maintain your connection with your customers, and you continue to support them?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Sam. I'm not sure that I really have the, you know, there's no simple answer to that. I think, continue to, so pricing point of view, I think we're kind of, you know, we try to make sure that there's both a value proposition to what we do, and also obviously fashion element is a fashion element. But, you know, I guess what I would do is, and probably a lot of brands have to face this, we're certain to cost pressures at the moment across the board. Pretty well everything is under pressure. So we, you know, different market, I might say, okay, well, we would, you know, we're lucky in that we've got a reasonable profit equation to our business. I think it's important for any business that's doing, you know, effective in the marketplace to make sure they maintain those things, because you need that to be able to invest in your brand and sort of return you know you need and you deserve, I think. But I think at times like this, we would be probably more inclined to absorb costs if they think they might be more transitory. So I think that's one of the ways we would try to support our customers in saying, well, you know, things were different, if things were more buoyant, if the world was maybe in a different space, we would probably like to pass on some of those cost pressures, but now we might try to absorb them. But the other thing is we've got a range of price options for people, depending on our different product categories. We're always, I think from day one when we introduce a product, we try to get it right day one. And that means you've got a little bit of play in it. Don't try to be, but definitely don't go into any new product at a challenging price point where we may have to increase price quickly, or that we can't make, you know, the right margin out of a product. We try to price. If it turns out in the years to come that, you know, actions, well, we're always doing that as a brand. But you know, really a lot of as a business, we've got certain fixed costs. So if we can drive the volume of our business, we're a better business. We're a more profitable business. So I tend to look at the fact that even when times are tough, in our case, because we've got a fairly unique product, and because I think we've got a well-priced product, I wouldn't say we notice huge gyrations. Obviously, you know, the sheer market conditions are different now to the middle of COVID. You know, you've got but I think we're competing quite well at the moment. So I think our strategy would be more about, continuing to stay true to our strategy, keep introducing products that delight people. And, I think there are a lot of competitive forces. There are people that may have to swap out of brands that were more expensive. We're also in a situation where for a lot of the marketplace now, supply is a problem. We've been able to invest in good stock of products. So I think that's also an area we can compete by always having product available to our customers when widely about people having supply line problems. One of the, I guess, wins we've had is that, yes, in the middle of COVID, there were some supply challenges, but we dealt with those. And most of our suppliers have been able to, perform pretty well after those initial gyrations. Cost of bringing product into, countries is more expensive. So that's one of the costs we've had to live with and has remained high. But I think one of the things we've been able to do through the good times of COVID is make sure we could invest more heavily in stock. So if there is another, impact down the track, will be, we've got a fair bit of insulation. So I feel quite comfortable in that regard. We could probably survive a year without placing an order on a supplier. So.
And do you do that in the same way as you talked about, doing a weekly release as well? You're sort of like planning ahead so that you can make sure that you have all those products in stock and in inventory in your warehouse ready to go so that you can, when you click the email, you're not waiting, you're not sort of going, oh, well, 2 months from now, we've got a new release coming and we don't know whether it's going to turn up or not, just purely based on the cost of things or, issues with the supply chain?
Yeah, everything. Look, we played a lot of catch up for the last, as a brand, we've had to play catch up as a huge pressure on our machine to produce new product. With COVID, there was, as a lot of you talk supply and bikes, we just couldn't get stock quickly enough. And that's a real challenge when you've got this business that you could be doing and you just can't get, enough of the stock quickly enough. Now, I think with more stability in the market, we can plan much longer into the future. Like I recently did my plan for 2023. Well, to be sitting in what was 2021 and say, I've got my 45 releases. Now we just have to lock in the designs, place the orders. We're in a position where we can do exactly as you say, make sure the product is ordered in the warehouses well ahead of release time so that we can get a really clean release strategy, a strong release strategy. We haven't always had that luxury over the last 2 to 3 years. We've had to cut and paste. We didn't get the product in, so we don't have the exciting release. And for a brand that prides itself on that weekly delight our audience, if we don't delight our audience for 2 or 3 weeks, then we lose some of that energy. So we don't want to do that. You've got a lot of challenges as a brand. All the things you can control that are positives, you want to try to control. We can't control those other things,
Excellent. I think I've got one more final question for you, Michael.
Okay.
What changes are you seeing coming up, sort of from a product point of view or a release or with your brand that people can look forward to, or what are you seeing coming forward that we should be looking out for?
Look, it's kind of difficult because you've got to stay in our space. So we've done things in recent years, like we introduced mountain bike jersey because that's a natural extension. This gravel jersey, and that's a natural extension. But we're kind of, we go into some accessories that look like they make sense. So we're always looking for what's out there in the market that other people are doing within our space that we could, put the Cycology thumbprint on. But, we got to go out of our space. We went into, activewear last year for women, thinking that was a logical extension, but suddenly we're producing this great design product that our customers are liking, but we're now in an activewear market. We're a cycling brand. So if you're trying to produce activewear, you're going head to head with some pretty big brands that have a really extensive range. So I think what you learn is that luckily within our brand set or our product set, the innovation can come in the new design, because people want more of what we. It's like if you got a great brand that you like and you like their shirts, Sam. You don't really care. You may not like their pants. You may not like, but you like the. So what's going to get you to buy again? Oh, in 6 months' time, when you're ready to buy, they've got a cool new shirt.
Yep.
So that's probably what we're more about. Yes, a little bit of extension of the range, but the design element lets us continue to get that newness, whether it's in existing product or potentially new ones. But my learnings are we stick to our knitting. We're cycling. That's where you guys can market to and that's where we perform well. If we go outside of those guardrails, they get munched.
Yeah, great analogy to end the conversation today. Thank you very much, Michael, for joining me. For those who don't know, Michael is actually on holidays today, so he's joined us remotely from his office, away from his office on where were you? Rainbow Bay? Is that where you said it was?
Rainbow Bay on.
Oh, and the internet's finally clogged out just at the end there as well. Michael was going to join from his balcony so that we could see the beautiful waves that are that he could see from the balcony. But thank you very much, Michael. We really appreciated your time today. I think it's some really interesting things you've been able to talk about. Really excited to work with you, and really appreciate the support that you've shown with us and how we can both work together as well. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for everyone listening and watching along on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. Thank you for all the questions coming in. Thank you for everyone for joining us on 101 of Overdose and Chill. Thanks, Mike.